and our guest for the night, Ron Canniff of Unsquishthefish podcast. Ron, it's nice to have you on with us tonight.
Hey, thanks for having me on, man.
So we got a lot of stuff to talk about here. A lot of stuff that happened today, and of course we have to talk about the game yesterday, the good and the bad, and the ugly as well. Most of it is the ugly, but we'll get into that. And then we're gonna go into a little bit of we're going to go into some interesting stuff here. There's a lot of mixed reactions on Twitter going around Dolphins Twitter regarding the results of said game. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and see if we think that there's any validity to what these people are saying, because some people have legitimate concerns and some people are just flying off the handle thinking the world is doomed or we're still okay, we're going to go Super Bowl anyway. So we're going to discuss that, but let's start off in order here. Let's start off with the Washington Redskins game. And the Miami Dolphins managed to beat the Redskins 17-10, I believe the score was. And it was not pretty. That's pretty much the best description I can give. It was, I said the good, the bad, and the ugly. Most of it was just plain ugly. There was not a whole lot of good stuff to talk about. There were a couple of really great things, and then there were a lot of not so great things. But in the end, it wound up being a victory for Miami. So you kind of take it in stride and say that, okay, hey, we won. Let's go with it and lick our wounds and go back to Miami, get ready to go for Jacksonville. But we see the game, we watch the game, and since we're not box score watchers, we kind of look at things beyond the whole statistics thing, and we look at beyond PFF. We look at our eyes, and we see things that the stats won't tell you. According to PFF, Kelvin Shepard and Zach Vigil were graded equally, and it was pretty clear just by watching that Zach Vigil was a better linebacker in the middle than Shepard ever was. Certainly he was faster. Certainly he was better at tackling. And then you have the ups and downs of Jamar Taylor. You have the ups and downs of Ryan Tannehill and his 93.5 passer rating, which gives further validity to the fact that there is no validity in quarterback rating. So, and you have, of course, the Dolphins offense just being unbalanced all over again. It's kind of what we kind of saw yesterday was a lot of the same problems that we had last season. There was no balance. They were very quick to abandon the run and just start throwing the ball. Of course, that was when they actually had the ball, because it seemed like the whole first half was just Kirk Cousins throwing dink and dunks and Alfred Morris running over people because he's the big bruiser back that everybody in Miami is wishing we had. So I want to ask you guys, if there was one thing you could take away from what happened in that game, what would it be?
I think, Lewis, there was definitely an overreaction on some aspects of the game. Anytime you're playing a game against a team that has a quarterback that has issues, you want to score points, and that was what Miami was struggling with the first half. Is the Redskins were able to control the time of possession, which was absolutely vital for them to keep the game close, because the Redskins, we would have literally blown them out if we would have got up 14 points early. It's because they were unable to throw the football really hardly at all. I mean, they were running such a conservative offense. And that's just something where hopefully we can get away from that. We experienced some of that last year too, but these next games we've got to put points on the board, and that's where the issue was than the run defense. Washington was loading up, running hardcore, run the football, and even the style of blocking they were doing, they weren't even attempting to score points in bunches. They were just attempting to control the clock and keep the game close. And that's really what was going on. The coaches did a good job of adjusting to that in the second half, and we really tightened down on the run. So I think people freaking out about our run defense definitely is overstating it. You got to look at the number of plays they were on the board or on the field, the defensive linemen, and how they held up. And they shut him down completely in the second half. So that to me is not a huge concern. Tannehill had a bad game, and you already alluded to that. The quarterback rating is not that great, but he missed some open passes where he was inaccurate. He threw a couple where he got pretty lucky they didn't get picked off. They literally hit Redskins in the hands. They were bad passes. So he was fortunate it didn't go worse than it did. And honestly, the most frustrating pass for me from Tannehill was on the second to last drive. He had a very clean pocket, and he had a wide open Jarvis Landry, and he missed him, and that would have almost won the game right there. When you get down to the end there, you can't afford to do 3 and outs, and we saw a lot of that last year. Where we've got a lead with about 4 or 5 minutes left, and we get the ball, and that's when you win those games with your offense. And we can't continue to rely on our defense to win those games at the end. We need our offense to pull its share of finishing a game out. So that's about where I would come in at.
Honestly, for me, I think the issue that I'm really having is that if you took this podcast right now and somebody listened to it and started hearing everything we're saying, we would think this must be an old podcast from last year. Because literally, it's like prison talk with the Dolphins. It's like you're going to get out of prison. When I get out of prison, everything's going to be great. It's going to be so much better. I'm going to do right. And then you get out and you do all the same things you did. You don't run the ball. You can't stop the run. You have inconsistent passes from Tannehill, missing wide open guys. I don't know. It was very frustrating for me, definitely, especially not running the ball in the first half. I mean, I know you only tried a couple times. You only had the ball 6 minutes, but you only had the ball 6 minutes because you weren't running the ball and controlling the clock, and they were, and they were running the ball up the gut on us, which I know Chad said you weren't as concerned about, but that was the number one thing I thought they would not do. If I had to put my money on anything, they're not going to run the ball on us, especially up the middle, and they did it, and did it so successfully. And yeah, granted, they went in the game just trying to keep it close, so they really game planned well. It seems like maybe we didn't game plan well, and I won't say we didn't adjust well, though, because in the second half they didn't score, they didn't get any third downs, they were very limited. So again, in that third quarter, we saw some good adjustment from Philbin like we saw last year, but again, everything was the same as last year. And then at a chance towards the end of the game, when we had a chance to get that kill, we ended up getting 1 first down, then having to punt, putting it back in the defense hands, but this time the defense held. And then when we came back finally at the end, we had a good run and got that first down and that final squash. So that was promising for me, and the play in the second half was promising, but it just seemed like so many of the same things as last year, which was the most frustrating part.
I can see that, Ron, and I kind of go with you here on this aspect. I'm kind of in the middle of both of you guys, because while I am concerned because of how badly it was, at the same time I'm not, because I have to look at it like this. They're not used to the game action yet. They've been the Dolphins defense up until just this game. Their first team defense has not gotten a whole lot of real game action. And they pretty much admitted, okay, whoops, that was not our best game. We were not firing on all cylinders, and they knew it. It wasn't like, oh, we tried our best and we still got beat. No, they're saying, yeah, we didn't execute so good. So I guess we can appreciate that they acknowledge that it wasn't a good game, because it wasn't. There really is very few things you can point at and say, you know what, that was a good game and we won. Other than you can probably make the argument that last year we probably would have lost that game, because we had a very bad habit of getting into close games, fighting, trying to fight back, making a good effort, and hopefully giving us some hope to think that maybe, just maybe, we can get there, and then they fall short. And it's quite possible they might have fallen short if Jarvis Landry hadn't come to the rescue with that punt return touchdown. I mean, yeah, let's see you do that, LaMike James. Oh, wait, you're gone. So,
Lewis, if I can also say, too, that I know that team by team, the different teams you play, the matchups are different, so you can't really compare, but you have to say, if you just took it in a vacuum, that performance yesterday wouldn't have beat probably 25 of the teams in the NFL. We happened to be playing one of the worst teams with one of the worst rosters, but I had plenty of teams yesterday. If we had played against, we would have gotten crushed.
Well, some people are saying that the Redskins are better than they give credit for, and well, if they play like that, then yes, Alfred Morris ran the ball 25 times. I mean, he's their workhorse, and he's a bruiser back, so usually teams with that kind of a bruiser back manage to win games off the backs of their running back. You look at teams like the Seattle Seahawks. You can talk about Russell Wilson all you want to, and Ron, you told me that you think that he's probably the best deep thrower in the NFL, and okay, you can make that argument if you feel like it. Personally, I think it's Big Ben Roethlisberger because I've never seen a prettier deep ball, and in that volume, it's like he threw 3 deep passes and he nailed all 3 of them. There wasn't even a question whether or not it would be made. It dropped right into his receiver's hands, but I think it's fair to say that Russell Wilson would not be nearly as good as advertised if he didn't have Marshawn Lynch running the football the way he does. Lynch, beast mode, he opens up the rest of the offense, and that's a good thing because his weapons at times are very, very questionable, so he needs that kind of help. But it seems to me that every game that Marshawn Lynch is pretty much shut down out of, Russell Wilson very often winds up getting shut down as well. And that's the thing that separates Big Ben from Russell Wilson. But it's the same kind of principle. You have the Redskins who are probably going to ride on the back of Alfred Morris because if I'm the Redskins, I'm certainly not going to trust Kirk Cousins to lead my team to victory. I would rather run on the back of my workhorse running back who happens to run people over as he runs. That's the kind of thing that I would do just as a head coach of the Washington Redskins. And it seems that on guys like Ndamukong Suh, you had Earl Mitchell there, Jordan Phillips and C.J. Mosley managed to make things a little bit better, and things got a little bit better when Zach Vigil came in for Kelvin Shepard. But the strategy seemed to be try and stop us if you can. We don't care that you have Ndamukong Suh. We're going to keep doing the same thing people were doing to you last year, and it seemed to work. They were cut blocking Ndamukong Suh. He was getting double teams. He was getting knocked down. You saw Olivier Vernon. Apparently, he got karate chopped out of the game, and people are upset about that. Not that anything's going to happen to him, I don't think. So you see this strategy of let's use the beast mode kind of running back, and let's find a way to win with that. And that's the way that the Seahawks have made their games. That's possibly how the Redskins will win their games, because if they were going strictly on the back of Kirk Cousins, I don't think they would have done as well as they did.
Yeah, it's the overreaction part of it. You just got to pay. The Redskins had a clear game plan, and that was to power run the football. And if you just do it over and over and over, the Redskins were getting a little bit of luck in there because they were able to. They had to convert a lot of third downs, and when you run an offense where you've got to convert a lot of third downs, you just typically, you control the time of possession, but you don't score a lot of points. And that's exactly what happened to the Redskins, and that's why they lost. And like I said, Tannehill was a little bit off in that game, and I'm not surprised. This is the first game of the season, and it's an away game. But that game, the Redskins did everything they could do just to keep it close. If we had put up a touchdown or two early on in that game and we had forced the Redskins to pass sooner, we would have blown it open, and you probably would have seen Cousins throw maybe another interception or two. But way I look at that is like people get worried and like, well, it was the Redskins. But, I would have said that yesterday the Bears, after seeing their defensive line and how they looked, that they're just going to get blown out by the Packers. And the Packers struggled to beat the Bears. I would have said that the Giants in no way are going to compete with the Cowboys because they just don't have the team. And at the beginning of the season, those are two of the favorites or the Super Bowl contenders are the Packers and Cowboys, and they struggled to win yesterday. And so to me, that's just the case in point that when you're talking about the opening game of the season, you don't have any film on those teams yet, and it's a tough game to prepare for. And I thought the Dolphins did all you can do, and that's adjust their game plan at halftime, and they completely shut down everything the Redskins were trying to do. It was just, Tannehill was just a little off, and they weren't throwing up points like I would expect them to. And Miami has got to get away from those games being close, and at least points wise, they got to get away from low scoring games. And I am extremely optimistic from our defense because I can tell you there are very few teams, if any, that could have had a first half like the Dolphins had. The number of brutal run plays the Redskins ran against that defensive line, and we literally were able to almost pull out our complete starting defensive line and put in our second string defensive line with hardly any drop-off. And, I mean, we pull out Ndamukong Suh, we put Jordan Phillips in, and he nearly killed Kirk Cousins when he got in there. We just have this insanely deep defensive line, and so we're fortunate that we can survive a game or I should say at least a half like the Redskins had, and not be all worn out, because a lot of teams in the league would have such a talent drop off, or they'd have to play their starters to fatigue, and the Redskins would have run all over them in the second half.
Yeah, I agree with the defensive line. Actually, I mean, if I'm maybe going to get a little crazy with it, if you had a team that had Shelby, Phillips, Mosley, and Fide, you wouldn't probably have the worst defensive line in the league. And that's all of our second string guys. So I love the depth of our defensive line. I'm still just surprised the way they were able to run it. I know they were doing some creative things, though. Yeah, they were chop block and Sue like crazy. I mean, it was just from the beginning you could see, oh, I see where they're going with this. I mean, they had a plan to keep it close. I think we got a little, maybe just kind of, we got caught off guard a bit by the style that they played against us. They probably didn't anticipate they would try and be as aggressive like that and run the ball up the middle. I'm going to give some credit to Gruden for doing that, because he really has a limited roster, honestly. And then when Deshaun Jackson went out, he had even of a more limited roster on offense. So.
Yeah, I understand what they were doing with Sue, the cutting, but they were cutting a lot all over the field, and so I got some heat on Twitter because I said the Redskins were playing Bush League football, because that's the reason Olivier Vernon got hurt, and they were cutting. And when you do that, when that's your methodology from an offensive line, what you're going for is to say, we do not want any runs for losses. We're going to give up the opportunity to have big runs. Because when you cut somebody, like when you send your lineman down to the ground like that, you've basically abandoned any downfield blocking as soon as you do that. And that's exactly what you saw the Redskins doing, is they were much more worried about trying to get 4 and 5 yards, and that was it, versus rip off 20 and 30-yard runs. And like I said, it's effective at trying to control the clock, but you just don't score points, because you've got to execute so many plays and you got to convert so many third downs. And I mean, there was a lot of 3rd and 1s, 3rds and 2s that the Redskins were having to convert. And granted, they did a good job and they controlled the clock at being able to do that. But when you do that over and over and over, you eventually don't convert those, and you end up with no points.
Granted, they look a little bit more like the Dolphins, maybe not even last year, but 2 years ago before Laser, where it was just everything was just short right there, but nothing was going deeper than 5-6 yards. So yeah, I agree with you there. But that was their way of keeping the pressure off Cousins, because if you got to wait for a route to develop 15 yards, that's when our defensive line's got to get into you. Plus, Cousins. I mean, he's had more interceptions per pass than just about any quarterback in the league over the last few years. So they did well to just play to their strengths and play to their weaknesses. I guess we got to give them some credit on that end.
No, it was a very good game plan out of the Redskins, because that, in my opinion, was the only way they could stay in that ball game. And unfortunately for Redskins fans, that's what this year is going to be like for them in general. And this is you're seeing the after effect of the RG3 trade now. Not only did he not really appear to have worked out for them, but they sacrificed a lot of talent in draft picks to be able to get him that, went to the Rams, and they just don't have it. And I mean, yeah, I like your point of 2 years ago. I go back even further to the Tony Sperano years, and I was just saying I hated so much before games when we play a team like the Patriots or like the Colts when Peyton Manning was leading them, and basically the game analysis would be, look, we cannot afford to turn the ball over at all, and we've got to keep it low scoring. And the reason is because we were in that situation like the Redskins are in. We didn't have a quarterback. We didn't have a bunch of skill players, and the reality is you go down 14 points, it's over. You don't have the ability to make those points up on offense. And so that's where I'm coming at this, especially these next 4 games when we're playing these quarterbacks like Blake Bortles and Mariota and all these guys. Those teams don't want to get in shootouts with those quarterbacks right now. And so it helps our defense a tremendous amount if we can put some points on the board and kind of change those playbooks, because the whole game our defense had to defend a full running game by the Redskins, and it wasn't until the very end of the game where you knew the Redskins had to pass, and some of it was ridiculous on the Redskins' part. I mean, they had plays where it was like 2nd and 15 or 3rd and 12 at the end of the game, and they were still running the ball. They were so afraid to let Kirk Cousins go. And I think part of that was, if you listened to the podcast last week when you were talking to the Redskins, my point was, I don't even know if the Redskins are that concerned with winning this game. It's not a divisional game for them. They need to have support for Kirk Cousins. And I think that whole game plan they employed was centered around trying not to make him look too bad, because I mean, look how much they protected him, and he still threw 2 interceptions. And I was laughing because I'm like, wow, did they watch film on the Dolphins? Because early on in that game, Cousins was throwing at Grimes. And I was laughing that his quarterback rating against Grimes was like 14. And I'm like, wow, you're throwing at Grimes. And then, eventually got picked off doing it. But that was just, that circumstance where if Kirk Cousins if they had turned him loose, and let's say he did like 10 to 15 more passes. Well, if he had thrown a pick 6 there at the end of the game or anything like that, think of what the week is like for the Redskins. I mean, you've got RG3 and Colt McCoy and Kirk Cousins, and it just spirals that situation out of control if Cousins is playing badly, because where do they go from there? Do you go back to RG3? You know what I mean? And so, I thought their game plan was ultra conservative, and it was the problem the Dolphins has. They just weren't getting the points on the board that you'd like to see.
I like what you guys are coming from, and I pretty much agree with you. The Dolphins, the Redskins rather, they seem to just want to make sure that Kirk Cousins did not mess up too badly. But even if that was their strategy, it worked for them, and that's why I brought up the Seattle Seahawks, is because you see how they're relying on Marshawn Lynch, or at least that's what they should be doing, seems to work in a way that, well, all they have to do is make sure that they have a good running game, and everything else will take care of itself. That's kind of the way that the Seahawks have won their games in the past. Because, again, Russell Wilson did not look good when Marshawn Lynch was not running free. Because they could get one-dimensional, and they could the opposing defenses could make sure, okay, all they have is Russell Wilson because Marshawn Lynch can't get past us. So all we got to do now is force them to try and pass the ball every play, and then we can take advantage of whatever mistakes Russell Wilson might make. And whether he's a better deep ball thrower or not, that's up to your discretion. I haven't watched Russell Wilson throw that many deep balls. I don't get to watch Seahawks games all that often. So I don't see the Seahawks succeeding nearly as I can't think of the right word. I'm tired. I wouldn't see them as succeeding as much as they have if Russell Wilson did not have help from Marshawn Lynch and a top defense all this time. And the fact that the Seahawks, how badly, I think they lost. How badly did they lose? I remember hearing that the Seahawks got absolutely pummeled.
No, it was
they lost in
overtime.
overtime.
Oh, it was overtime.
You were talking about some of the people overreacting on Twitter. I'm not going to mention names, but I was laughing because there was a guy on Twitter who was just ripping Philbin, just saying that was one of the worst coached games he'd ever seen. And I was like, are you serious? They adjusted at halftime, and the Redskins never scored the rest of the game. Yeah. But he just said if they had a real NFL coach like Pete Carroll. And I just responded to him and said, you're talking about the coach that passed on the 1-yard line in the Super Bowl, and then in that game, Lewis, they went into overtime, and Pete Carroll onside kicked it to start overtime. I kid you not. And so I'm just thinking, that's your coach, the one that onsided it to start overtime? I mean, really? And that's with, his defense. So I'm thinking, Seattle has the last couple of years have won off Marshawn Lynch having Russell Wilson play efficient and having a suffocating defense. And so I didn't get it, but it wasn't like the Seahawks got blown out by the Rams. That's a division. I don't like our division, but I wouldn't want to be in Seattle's division because the Rams and Cardinals are not pushovers for football teams, and so trying to win that division means a lot of getting beat up in dogfights to try to win it. So I would much rather have the Colts division personally. But anyway,
who wouldn't want to have the Colts division with Jacksonville, Tennessee, and Houston?
Long story short, though, is we opened on the road in an away game, and we came away with the win, and that alone is hard enough in the NFL. And it wasn't like the Super Bowl favorite teams, blew people out of the water. The Patriots didn't blow the Steelers out of the water. The Cowboys didn't blow the Giants out of the water. The Packers didn't blow the Bears out of the water. It's the NFL, and it's tough games, and teams aren't going to just play game plans that suit their weaknesses on paper, and that's what the Redskins did. And we're fortunate that we had Jarvis Landry. He was the difference maker in the game, but that's how you win consistently. Like if Ryan Tannehill has to have a Pro Bowl game every game for us to win, we're probably not going to be that successful. You need to have a team that has a good defense, has a good offense, and has players that make differences throughout the game, and that's what we have this year. That's why we won the game. I would say the Dolphins team from 2 years ago would not have won that game.
Yeah, I would think that maybe they don't win that game, but my only issue is, I mean, I'm gonna speak now from a fan and less from, I mean, a pseudo analyst spot here. As a Dolphins fan, I have very high hopes for this team. And I got to be honest with you, we got to win, but what I saw on the field yesterday did not look like a playoff team, and I expect playoffs for these Dolphins, and that's the reason. I think that's the reason, the frustration of all the Dolphins fans, right there, point blank, in a nutshell. They did not watch television yesterday and see a competitive playoff team that can compete with New England, that can compete with Indianapolis, that can compete with Denver, even though we've gone in and done those things over the past few years and played very competitive games. The eyeball test, throwing all stats out, throwing the score, throwing out the win, it did not look like a playoff team to me right now. And I think I'm just going to say that's the reason I believe most Dolphins fans are a bit frustrated with what they saw yesterday.
Well, the expectation was to have a 40 bazillion and 0 -3 blowout. Then
yeah, yeah, exactly.
I expect them to do better than they did, but I mean, I said it on your show just last night, Ron. Andrew Abramson of the Palm Beach Post. He tried to warn me the Redskins were not going to just lay down and die just because we're the Miami Dolphins and we're obviously much more talented than you did. It was season home opener, first week of the season, and they have a lot of stuff to prove now because everybody's thinking, oh, they're a dumpster fire and they're doomed and all that stuff. And no player likes to hear stuff like that. Nobody. If you are content with the thought that, oh well, everybody expects us to fail, then you have bigger problems than the fact that the team is not going to do well. You have problems like you don't really care about football. You're just here to make your paycheck and go, and so you don't really have a passion for it. But the Redskins fought back like Andrew told me they would, and I got to give it up to him because he called it. He didn't. It was not going to be. He predicted the Dolphins would win. But he was the one telling me, don't sleep on them because it's that adrenaline and stuff like that can be a big deal. And that's not even calling crowd control because it was like 60-40 Redskins, but there were a lot of Dolphin fans, enough that I could actually hear them chanting, "Let's go Dolphins," on the television, and that's not something you expect a lot.
Yeah, to me, I like it if you can not play a great game and win. That's a good sign you're a good team in general. I mean, again, Tannehill, he had a poor game in my opinion. He wasn't horrific. He clearly is better than Kirk Cousins, but this was not what probably in the last 5 or 6 games he's played. This one wasn't his greatest, and again he's opening on the road, and it's his first game of the year, and so. I expect as the season goes on, he's going to get sharper and sharper as they get more comfortable into the offense. But, I didn't notice an aspect of our game that we were getting dominated in. And like I said, Tannehill
not even on defense for the running game.
No, they weren't. They as I was trying to explain, the Redskins had a game plan where they weren't even attempting to run plays designed to score. They were attempting to control the time of possession and keep it close. And you know what? You could probably do that with any team in the league practically. If I'm going to come in and I'm just going to cut linemen all game and try to get my back so he can get 3 or 4 yards and then hope I can convert a third short over and over and over down the field, you can play that style and you can control the time of possession against most teams. The reality is that doesn't work at all if somebody starts putting points on the board and then you just get blown out. And the Redskins, they got fortunate in the first half. They were able to complete a lot of those third down conversions, but it wasn't like if the Miami Dolphins defense, if line was getting physically dominated, they wouldn't have had the second half they had. It was a change in scheme. The Dolphins switched up a little bit, and they just shut them down from there on out. The Dolphins did not get physically dominated in that game. Our secondary was not getting smoked by the Redskins skill players. Lamar Miller was not just getting shut down, and it was just one of those things where Tannehill was just a little off, and we missed a few opportunities. But if he hits Deion Sims in the corner of the end zone and he hits one more pass, that game's really not that close as it was. And so I take away from that the Dolphins opened up. They were rusty. They didn't have a great game, and they still won. Just like the other teams do that in the league. Just like the Patriots did not have a great game against the Steelers, but you know what? The Patriots won. The Cowboys did not have a great game against the Giants, but you know what? They won. And so as long as you come out of there with a win, I don't feel too bad about it. Now, if we continue to have team after team just roll over us for 200 yards a game, then I'll be more concerned about it. But I'm not that worried about it. I just expect more out of Tannehill going forward. I expect him to be a little more accurate, and I expect our offense to be scoring more like 21 to 28 points every game, because our offense only scored 10 points that game. I mean, Jarvis Landry's punt return won the game, but that whole game we had only scored 10 points. And the Redskins have a solid defense up front, but that's not the level of defense we're going to face against teams like Buffalo. And so our offense has quite a ways to go yet. And I don't care how good the number of play counts our defense was on the field, and to hold the Redskins down is not hard. Our offense has got to play a more balanced game, get more points, and hold the ball longer to make it a realistic chance for our defense to keep those games in check.
Here's the problem with the balanced offense, I think, and we're going to talk about Tannehill in a minute to segue into this, but it seemed that the Dolphins, the first play the Dolphins did was a pass, and then the next two were runs that got stuffed. And after that, that was pretty much it. They ran it one more time with Lamar Miller, and they ran it on the 4th and 1 with Damian Williams, and of course, as somebody pointed out, DeJuan James did not blow his assignment. He did his assignment. There was just still an unblocked a defender coming right from behind him, so that didn't work out. The Dolphins seem this is the problem that was there last year. They seem all too willing to abandon the run, despite the necessity this offense has for the running game to be functioning. Again, the Dolphins were pretty much one-dimensional in the whole first half, and as a result, they had a hard time making things happen. They did manage to get into the end zone one time, and I don't remember if that was in the second or the first half, but Tannehill hit Matthews after a lot of help from Jordan Cameron and a lot of help from his receivers, and he had his problems. And like you said, Chad, hopefully he'll get sharper, but the simple fact is he did not do good, and it was against a Washington Redskins defense that is really not all that impressive. But you got to look at it like this. If Tannehill gets better, that means it was a false alarm, everything was going to be okay, and the Dolphins' offense will be good. But it's only gonna work if they decide, you know what, maybe we need to run the ball with Lamar Miller more. Alfred Morris, and I said this on your show, Ron, Alfred Morris ran the ball at least twice as many times as Lamar Miller did. And as a whole, the Redskins team ran the ball more than twice the amount of times that the Dolphins did.
You got to understand, Lewis, that the Dolphins are 100% all in as their offense is designed to set the run up with the pass. They are not a set the pass up with the run team at all. And, the Dolphins absolutely do not have the personnel to run the ball when a defense knows that's the primary thing they're going to do. Their running game is based off of deception, read options, and really quick hits with Lamar Miller on teams that are defensively trying to defend the pass. And, I mean, last game, when Deion Sims went out, we didn't even have a second tight end. And you see what the Redskins were doing. They're running a lot of double tight ends and fullbacks. They're putting fullbacks in there. That's their power running the football. Miami almost exclusively runs three wide receivers with one tight end, which is Jordan Cameron, who's an average blocking tight end at best. He's a receiving tight end. They simply don't have the guys where you can just man up, push people around and run the football, and their linemen are built that way. You know, Jawan James is not a powerful offensive lineman. He's a tall, lanky guy that's a good pass blocker, and he can move really well on screens and traps. Same with Dallas Thomas. Same with Mike Pouncey, and Brandon Alberts was very limited in that game. He had that huge brace on. And so I think, it's great because you see Lamar Miller have those successful runs, but that's got to be predicated on Miami being able to successfully throw the football until a team has to adjust more. So if a team's in its base defense, Miami needs to be able to successfully throw the ball on them. If they are not successfully throwing the ball on them, they're going to struggle because Miami's offense, will struggle to run the ball on a typical base defense with linebackers in there on a consistent basis. So, hopefully, with Stonebrenner, they'll be able to run a little more, obviously, with Jacksonville, because it's pretty hard to run with 5 offensive linemen that are not massive run-blocking linemen and Jordan Cameron. That's just the reality of it.
Okay, but this is the thing, Chad. I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying. I understand that's how the Dolphins' offense works, but the amount of imbalance is too high for me. Because Lamar Miller only ran the ball 13 times.
That's because they were doing 3 and outs. When Tannehill misses an open guy and that's a 3 and out, or they don't convert a 3rd and 1, they're off the field, and so it's hard for them to get going on the run. And I don't believe the Redskins were jumping out of their base defense early on simply because Miami was not executing their offense very well. And so, I can say you could go back and watch ever since Philbin's been there, and you're going to see very few times where Miami is pounding the football. It drives me nuts that they won't even do it on short yardage situations. I mean, most logical teams bring in an extra lineman, so they have 6 linemen on the field with a tight end, and they just either quarterback sneak it or slam it right in behind all those extra linemen up front to try to get a yard. Miami literally stays in 3 wide receiver sets on 3rd and 1, which, it's crazy to see it, but that's literally what they do on offense. I don't quite understand the theory behind that, but you're not going to see Miami pounding the ball with Lamar Miller. He's going to be getting, I would say at most a ratio of 35 to 40% run to pass, and I don't see Miami going away from that.
What now, Chad?
I said I don't think you're going to ever see Miami, the way they run their offense, do a run to pass ratio where it's going to be much higher than 35-40% run, unless it's a game where they've got a lead and it makes more sense to run the football. They pass a lot more than they run the ball. That's the way that offense is scripted to work.
Okay, I thought something sounded wrong because I had you garbled a little bit and it sounded like you said a racial, and so it's like wait what what
I know everybody's always no, everybody's always trying for that mysterious 50-50 run to pass ratio, and the idea is you want the defense to have no idea what you're going to do. Is it going to be pass or is it going to be run? But I just said with Miami, they're going to throw more than they run the football. That's the personnel packages they put on the field, and that's the way they work. Their runs are not designed to say, we're going to smash it down your mouth, you can't stop it. It's much more to say, we're going to pass the ball, you can't stop it. If you try to adjust extra guys to stop the pass, then we're going to hit you with the run.
But here's the thing with that, and the problem I think that lies is that when you're in a 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2 situation, the team knows you have an instinct to pass. They know what that pass is going to be. It's going to be a short pass. So they're still bringing up an extra person in the box, which doesn't let you to run, but the safety's right there, so he's going to be there to stop a short pass because they don't think that Tannehill's going to go on 3rd and 1, he's going to throw it 20 yards. I don't think I've ever seen that happen, to tell you the truth. It probably has, I'm just not remembering. So I don't know that it's still very effective to not be able to run the ball on 3rd and 1 or 3rd and 2. I just don't think this team goes far not being able to do that. I don't think any team in the NFL goes far. Even maybe the mighty Eagles, who I believe are actually getting crushed right now, but are going to go far. not being able to get 2 yards on the ground, line up, and just get the 2 yards.
I could
I
not
just don't.
agree with you more. I mean, I have been preaching that for 3 years now that, look, in any level of football, high school, college, or NFL, it's no secret if you have 1 yard to go, bring in big linemen and push the pile, and it's nearly impossible to stop those from being converted. It's very difficult, and Miami never ever does that. They were running a little more double tight lately because they had Deion Sims, but you can pretty well count on that being thrown out the window again for the coming weeks. They're not going to run near as much double tight end now with Stonebanner over Sims. It's going to be almost exclusive their 3 wide receiver sets, and if they're going to be running that, you're not going to see them power running the football. And it is very frustrating because the majority of teams, especially if they have an athletic quarterback, they usually just sneak it. Your quarterback's just looking at whatever line gap that shoots forward, and he just jumps forward and gets that yard. But do you remember the last time Ryan Tannehill just jumped forward to quarterback sneak it for a yard?
No, I just don't think they have faith in the line. And, I mean, you at least think with Pouncey there, you could get it, but I just don't know that they have faith that the line will get any kind of push in the interior besides Pouncey. I'm guessing that, but
it's rare
I don't know.
that Tannehill lines up under center in those circumstances.
That's true, too. He almost slides up either in the pistol or the shotgun. I mean, almost exclusively. And they run the ball out of that, and it's an effective running game. It's like that. It's just a smart zone read. It is a college-style offense that we run. It really, truly is. I know sometimes people say that as a dig. I mean, it's not a dig. It's just a fact. We do run Oregon's old offense, zone read, smart zone read offense. It's not an option offense. It's not like the quarterback is, I'm gonna pass it, or I'm gonna keep it and run. Every now and then he keeps it and runs it, but not often. But we even run out of the shotgun, which might be part of the problem why we struggle to really get that 1-2 yard. It's just the offense isn't set to do that. I just wish that we could,
This was the most skewed we've had it ever. Like I said, they kept 2 tight ends total. We don't even have a fullback.
And I didn't think that would happen. That was crazy that we only kept 2 tight ends. I had a friend of mine who said we're going to keep 2 tight ends, and I just ridiculed him for it. And it happened, and I couldn't believe it. And then as soon as that happened yesterday, and I was doing a live broadcast of the show yesterday, I said, and that's why you keep more than 2 tight ends as soon as Sims got out, because then we had 1. I mean, 1 tight end. What if Cameron had gotten hurt? You're going to run an offense with 4 wide? You never run 2 backs. That's insane.
That's exactly what their line of thinking is. They're thinking we've got our talent in our wide receivers, and we're comfortable going 4 wide all game if we have to. And, Miami can do that, and I understand the reasoning. It's just it hurts them to not employ a power attack on those short yardage situations. I think they should bring in 6 linemen almost every time when it's a 1 yard to go on 3rd or 4th down. That's just what I would do.
And what happened to, again, it was just a preseason. They were maybe just playing around, goofing off a little. But I really thought that maybe they were seriously considering using Earl Mitchell as like a faux fullback on some situations like that. I guess not, because they got in those.
They were experimenting. It meant absolutely nothing. It was a one-time deal, and it was not a real thing. I don't even know why they bothered to do that. It's kind of like the same thing they did with Jordan Phillips. Here, if you can catch this punt return, then we'll skip the walkthrough for the day. And maybe they shouldn't have skipped the walkthrough. Maybe they need to get as much practice as they can. Just a thought.
Right, but the point being is Miami can. If they were to lose Jordan Cameron in that game, after Sims, they have the personnel to go 4 wide. And if you're a team like the Redskins, you absolutely have to have an extra tight end. Because could you imagine if the Redskins had lost 2 of their tight ends and they didn't have any other tight ends and they would have had to go 4 wide the rest of that game with Kirk Cousins? That would have been like death for them, because they have to be able to power run the football to survive.
Yeah, no, that would be a different situation. We could have definitely handled that better than they could have, as far as our offensive team, and they're limited. I keep saying it's not a dig. It's just the truth. Their offense is limited. Their guys are very one-dimensional. It just is what it is. They just did their one dimension a lot better than we expected yesterday, pretty much.
Yeah, it was, but hopefully. We've got Jacksonville next week, and Jacksonville's going to be another team where you want Jacksonville having to be in situations where they have to throw the football because we want to be able to have our guys pin their ears back and attack the quarterback and have that quarterback trying to throw a lot of passes under duress. And that's going to hold true for the first few games. But we've got to have our team to the point where we are able to score 28 points on offense, because when we get to those games where you're going up against Tom Brady, it just won't cut it.
And that's something we're going to have to look at going forward. But let's change gears now, since we've been going on about the game for almost an hour now. And we have a lot of roster moves to keep an eye on. So let me just pull this up here real quick, because there's a lot of stuff to look at here. I spent pretty much all day keeping an eye on this. So first of all, Mike James. I feel bad when I call him LaMichael, because I feel like I'm disrespecting him in a way, but at the same time, I don't feel he earned the right to change his name to something like LaMike. Is like, your name has been LaMichael all this time. If you want to change your name, then be something good. Like if we're like Chad Johnson to Chad Ochocinco, he was already a superstar. He can get away with stuff like that. LaMike or LaMichael or whatever you want to call, or whatever his real name is, didn't earn it in my eyes. And apparently he decided that he's not going to be worth it, and he got cut from the team. Now, if he clears waivers, it's very possible. If he clears waivers, then it's very possible that he'll wind up on the Dolphins practice squad all over again, and that's fine if you want to keep him around for that. I don't care. It's a spot. Maybe he'll come back and find a way to make something happen, but I don't see that happening.
I don't think so, Lewis. I think he's gone. I mean, I don't know what it is about him, but he has kind of I don't know if it's a cocky attitude or something like that. And even off that, when he fumbled that kick return in that game, then that's really what lost his job, even though he recovered it himself.
Yeah.
He had just muffed a punt the prior week, which really had cost his chance to be the punt return. After he muffed that punt in the preseason, I'm sure Philbin looked at that and said, you know what, I think I'll just have Landry do it, because I feel a lot more confident he's going to handle the punt cleanly. And, when he went to the sidelines in that Redskins game, he had this look on his face like he was like, no big deal, I got this. And I was just thinking, I'm nervous with him back there right now. And as soon as that happened, as soon as you don't feel confident that he can cleanly handle the football, he has very little value to the team. And if the team were not bringing in extra running backs and they were manipulating their roster for, to have a tight end on it and send James to the practice squad, I get it. But I have to think when he had that altercation with Landry, I think they said he came in a really bad mood, and I almost wonder if it wasn't because they had signed Gray and activated him to the 53, because bringing Gray in when they did before that game was telling me that they're not comfortable if Lamar Miller gets hurt early in that game. They're not comfortable with alternating LaMichael James and Damian Williams in there. They want a different running back for that scenario. And so to me, that made him mad, but the writing to me was already on the wall. Miami just doesn't trust him to be their number 3 back, and that's the way it is.
And I'm going to go all the way back into the scrimmage that you and I were at, Lewis. A few of the writers tried to say that LaMike James had this amazing game, and I just kind of felt like it was Damian Williams that had the big game in that scrimmage. And ever since then, in all the practices I saw, and I saw a lot less than you saw, I really just saw a lot more from Damian Williams, and I didn't understand what all the hype was, number one. Number two, I say if somebody is your best returner, whether it's a punt returner, whether it's a kickoff returner, that's the person that should be playing. I mean, if Antonio Brown, maybe the number 1 receiver in the league, can be the returner, and they're willing to risk him to be the returner, and that's a good team, and I'd say a pretty smart coach, then I'd say that's what you should be doing in Miami. Landry is leaps and bounds better to me than LaMichael James, and he's the one that should be returning anyway. And if LaMichael James isn't returning, then really what's the point of having him on the team, in my opinion?
That's why he's not.
I mean, that's the point. It's like, but we kind of all saw this coming, right?
Most of us did. Some of us really liked LaMichael James, and you were dealing with a few people, right, Ron, who were saying that LaMichael James needed to stick around. He had something special about him.
I think I just today I just still seeing even after the performance I'm still seeing so many people say that we need to have Landry, um, not returning the punts and not returning the kickoffs. I'm like, really? Even after this first game, you're still gonna come back to me with that? I just don't get it.
I think what that is more. I don't. Well, for that point specifically, I think that's more along, not so much along the lines of they like LaMichael James. It's more along the lines of, oh well, what happens if Jarvis Landry gets hurt? Oh, we're doomed. And Chad, I said this on Ron's show last night, and I want to run this by you. I brought this up for like a sort of speculation thing, and I don't know what the feedback was from that. Ron, you can tell me later. I suggested something interesting, and I thought that this might be something worth speculating. If we are so afraid that Landry can get hurt, like you see the Pittsburgh Steelers, they don't care. They send Antonio Brown out there to get hurt if something happens. You see the Patriots send out Julian Edelman. They're going to go out and they're going to let him do whatever it is he does. And while Edelman's not a star wide receiver, he is Brady's top 2 target. Him and Gronk are pretty much the only people that he throws to the whole game. And then you see, what was it I heard? Broncos use Emmanuel Sanders, who's one of their best wide receivers, and he's returning punts, and some of them may be returning kicks too. I don't know. So why is it that knowing all of this, you see all these great teams just going out there and throwing their best guys out there for a very crucial spot on the team, but when it comes to Landry, we as Dolphins fans are so hesitant, so afraid to let Landry go out there because he is the best thing we have, and he's proven it over and over again, and he especially proved it in yesterday's game. LaMichael James, I was beyond done with him already, but when he kicked the ball out of his own hands with his knee, and that was how he fumbled. It's not like he got hit and something happened. No, he kicked it out of his own hands. That is the epitome of pathetic. I can't even come up with a better way to explain it because I was so unbelievably shocked. I was just numb. It was like, I didn't just see that. There's no way I could have just seen that. That's worse than the butt fumble because at least the butt fumble, he ran into somebody.
It was someone else's butt, not his own.
It was somebody else's butt, not his. That would be like running into your own butt and dropping the football. And at least he went back and picked it up. But because it's like, oh my gosh, you made yourself fumble.
I see both sides of it, Louis. You got to differentiate something here, and that's punt return versus kick return. And kick return, in my opinion, is it's a little easier of a job than a punt return job.
But it's more dangerous.
Well, both of them are dangerous, of course. But the reality is, for me, this is just my opinion, I don't get overly excited about the really fast guys that have the ability to rip one back all the way for a touchdown, just because that's such a small percentage of likelihood. Now, granted, it won the game for us yesterday, but I will take a guy over, in particular on punt return, that will absolutely never drop it. I mean, it's just that loses football games almost immediately if you come in, you hold the team on defense, they punt the football, and you immediately give it back to them in scoring position. It's just a backbreaker. And so I personally like Landry on punt return to the extent that I feel very comfortable. I don't know who else I'd put back there, maybe Grimes, who's just as viable to the team. That I feel like I feel very comfortable he's not going to drop a punt. And so that's where I go with Landry, where that kick return, I'm a little more tentative because I don't know the likelihood he's going to return a lot of kicks for touchdowns. And I don't know. I can understand maybe using another person on kick returns instead of Landry to try to limit the punishment he takes because his value to the team is astronomically high right now. We probably would have lost yesterday if we didn't have Jarvis Landry on our team. But on the flip side, to be the other direction is that's one of our deepest positions on the team. And so we could actually lose Jarvis Landry tomorrow. We could probably shift Rashard Matthews inside to play that slot. And then we'd go with Kenny Stills, Rashard Matthews, and Greg Jennings with Devontae Parker on the bench still. and Matt Hazel if we really need another receiver. So it's honestly probably our most expendable position in terms of having depth, but Jarvis Landry's he's like the heartbeat of the team, and I mean the stuff he does, some guys can't do that. So, I mean, how do you say no? We may not have won the game yesterday if we had LaMichael James returning punts yesterday. We may not have won the game. So,
I don't think we would have. I'll be honest.
I don't think we would have.
I don't think we would have. I mean, like I said, you can't go back and I said last night, you can't go back and play it over again and see. But I mean, no matter what, win, lose, or draw, it would be a different game without that punt return touchdown.
Oh, yeah.
A totally different game. I mean, so yes, it was Landry that saved us, but it was Landry who saved us doing what? Returning a punt.
The bottom line is he's one of our best players, and he's making a difference, and you want to try to get him in there to make it. So I do understand it, and I would advocate heavily to keep him on punt return, but I'm more neutral on kick return for using Jarvis Landry for that to minimize the impacts he's taken. But I mean, it takes nerves of steel to stand under that football when those guys are coming out on you full speed, and you're trying to decide in a second's notice to fair catch it or not. And we don't have a more fearless guy on the team than Jarvis Landry, so I feel good about it's him doing that on the punt return for sure.
I mean, I think it was like, I'm sorry, I was going to say like Devon Best. Now, Devon Best was not our number one receiver by any stretch of the imagination, but he was one of the first guys since maybe like McDuffie that I really, every time he went back there, I just didn't even think for a millisecond the guy was going to drop it. And I'm not even that comfortable with Landry yet because he dropped a couple last year. But I'm a lot more comfortable with Landry than I am.
I'm not too worried about him dropping. What worries me about Landry is he's just freaking crazy, and so
he's a monster, man. He's a monster.
Yeah, but I mean, he'll get. I have to imagine he doesn't fair catch unless he absolutely has to, and so my bigger concern with him turning the ball over on punt return would be not just fair catching it and taking a shot and having the ball jarred loose or something like that. But he's the best one we have on our team right now for punt return without doubt. So I would definitely keep him in there. And whether or not they shift him over kick return, I guess remains to be seen. I've heard they're going to use Damian Williams right now to do the kick return, but we'll just have to wait and see who does that.
And I'm gonna bring back what I was originally gonna speculate about, Chad, because I got into my rant about LaMike James because it made me so angry to think about that I completely missed my point. Here's what I speculated with Ron, and I'm not saying this is what it is, but it kind of feels this way to me because when you look at all these other teams and they're so willing to throw their best guys out there and let them do whatever it is they do on the dangerous parts of the game, but Miami fans are so scared to let Landry go out there because they're afraid he might hurt himself. And let's be honest, Jarvis Landry is not Antonio Brown. He's not. I'm sorry.
No.
He's not even close. And Jarvis Landry, he's probably somewhere near the same level of Emmanuel Sanders and Julian Edelman. And I only say Edelman because just based on his production due to being with Brady. So not even him being good, it's just that he's a top target. So here's what I speculated. Is it possible that our innate fear, and I say "our" because it's Dolphins fans kind of as a group. I'm not saying I am because I would rather he just go out there and do whatever it is he does because that's what he is. He's a playmaker. Is it possible that our hesitance and our complete unwillingness to let Landry go out there and do the kick returns and the punt returns, is that their way of saying we don't trust Ryan Tannehill unless he has his top target available to him at any time? Is it because we don't think he can handle it unless he has the security blanket like he had in Brian Hartline 2 years ago?
No, I think it's Landry's that good. And I mean, I appreciate your comparisons, but I'll throw Antonio Brown in there, and there's not one of those guys you name would have ran 3 guys over and still got a first down in the game. To me, Landry's very special. And a comparison I haven't heard I kind of liked was maybe Hines Ward in his prime, but for lack of a better word, Landry's a badass, and so he changes the dynamic of a game because when you see a guy that's that size going out there running over safeties and defenders to get the first down, selling out, that inspires the rest of the team to think, man, if he's out there doing that, he's out there killing himself for that first down. That makes them do those same things. And as good as Miami's receivers are, like that's what I mean when I say he's the heartbeat of the team. Landry's just a beast out there, and so you want him out there on the field, being one of your leaders. But I don't think it has anything to do with Tannehill. And actually, I mean, Tannehill uses Landry a lot because he's so reliable, but I think Jordan Cameron has given Tannehill. Jordan Cameron is better than Charles Clay has ever been in terms of his ability to make dynamic plays down the field. And you immediately saw that in this game with the vertical pass that Jordan Cameron went up and caught. And that's my impression, that he's going to be one of Tannehill's security blankets. So if you took Landry out of there, and with the talent they have at wide receiver, I think you would probably see Jordan Cameron's production go up a little bit because Tannehill's comfortable. But I don't think it reflects poorly on Tannehill at all.
And here's the thing here, Ron, and Chad, you too. I'm sorry, I'm exhausted. It's like, oh yeah, Chad, you too. Yeah, you're here. I'm sorry. So, I just say that because that's kind of what it feels like. It seems like there's a lot of people that after this last game, they're still not convinced that Tannehill can be the guy. And I saw a lot of tweets out there saying that, well, I guess he still has more improving to do. And that is true. He still needs to improve. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But one game in, and we're already freaking out that Tannehill's not the guy all over again. And it seems like, what is he supposed to do? I mean, even if you're a QB rating drone and you believe that QB rating is a honest-to-goodness, real way of comparing quarterbacks to each other and saying, well, this guy must have done good because his quarterback rating and blah, 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 blah. 93.5 is pretty much, what is it, 1 point lower than his entire average for the whole year last year? And that was during his improving games, not his bad games. If this was a bad Tannehill game and his QB rating was 93.5, this is how you get back at the QB rating drones. You kind of throw the stat back in their face. If this was a bad game for him and he had a QB rating of 93.5, then doesn't that mean that it can only go up from there?
No, I agree with you 100%. I have said that if this is the worst, like if this is the bad of the bad that Tannehill's going to give us, last year, if you want to go with the ratings, it was in the mid-70s. He gave us the mid-70s the first 3 games of the season, and a few more games after that against Jacksonville and whatnot. If this is going to be this year's bad from Tannehill, because you know the good's coming. You know it's coming. And I will take it. And I will throw out the rating for a minute and just look at the eyeball test. If that's the worst game Tannehill gives us, and if he'll give us a few more like that probably, but if that's what it's going to be, I will take it. Because that's not as bad as I've seen him play in other games, even in last year, several games. So if that's a bad game for Tannehill, you know what, that's fine with me. We'll move on because we know we're going to see better.
Yeah, absolutely. And I get this, and I answer this over and over with the same response. And it's like, well, Tannehill could be better. I understand Ryan Tannehill is not Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers, he's phenomenal.
Aaron Rodgers and Aaron Rodgers. Not even Peyton Manning is Aaron Rodgers level anymore.
So I get that, but I always ask people, you tell me how you're going to go get a better quarterback than Ryan Tannehill. You just explain to me how you're going to go about doing that. Because you don't get one from another team. It's not like Green Bay's gonna say, "Oh, you bet you can have Aaron Rodgers. We don't need him." Those quarterbacks are not available, and the quarterbacks that are Tannehill's peers are not even realistically available. And so you don't go get
RG3 is available if you're interested.
Yeah, there you go.
I think he meant peers. I think he meant peers by equals, not peers by drafted in the same year.
No, I'm talking about people
like Andy Dalton's and
Philip Rivers, Andy Dalton, any of those guys. Those guys are not available, and those are your average, above average guys. You can't go get them. And so the only way you either go with below average quarterbacks, is which Miami did for years, free agent quarterbacks that were below average, or you draft them, and so that's a crapshoot in itself. Are you going to draft a good one? And then if you do even go the route to draft them, you've got the developmental time, and you've also got the giving up of the talent. So if you start drafting number 1 pick quarterbacks to try to upgrade a quarterback over Tannehill, then you're giving up your starting offensive lineman, you're giving up starting defensive backs, and so it's just he's good. He's a good quarterback. He's not a Hall of Fame, greatest of all time right now, but there's nowhere even close to realistically that you can upgrade Ryan Tannehill right now. That's the fact of it.
Okay, yeah. I'm totally with you there, Chad. And again, I only threw out that speculative little piece there because I'm kind of getting that vibe. It's like, well, because again, that you said that you would kind of put it in an Antonio Brown category, and while I don't agree with that aspect of it, that's your prerogative. And either way, it's pretty much it's the same principle. You send your playmaker out there to go and make plays in a position where playmaking is so important. If you get a bad kick return, you're in bad field position. You get a good kick return, you're in good field position. That's a big deal, and it's not as bad. It's not as inconsequential as some people might think. I don't know many people, even QB rating drones, who will say that field position doesn't matter. You need to have good field position, and Mike James just wasn't doing it for us. Landry consistently found ways to make that happen in kick returns, in punt returns, and whenever he had the ball in his hands, he made something happen. But it seems like only Dolphins fans are really concerned with the idea that Landry might be going out there and doing those things. I don't see Steelers fans freaking out about Antonio Brown. I don't see Patriots fans freaking out about Julian Edelman, and I don't see Broncos fans freaking out about Emmanuel Sanders. Why is Landry getting this kind of attention?
And then why are the coaches doing it too? I don't see Tomlinson worrying about Brown. I don't see Belichick worrying about Edelman. And so again, it's the coach too. I'm not understanding. The fans can say what they want to say. We're going to want what we want. Put that all aside. What is it that has the coaches so concerned when you see the best coaches in the league on some of the best teams in the NFL doing it? Why are we not doing it when the gap is clearly so great and the advantage to me of field position is so great? I just don't know how you don't have them doing it.
Oh, I totally get it because you look at it in place. And so the NFL is such a close league now, and this game with Redskins is a good point, is how many returns does your returner get his hands on the ball? Now, what are you going to say? Maybe 4 or 5 times a game on average, three to five? That guy's going to get his hands on the ball. That's 3 to 5 plays. And how many games are decided by 3 to 5 plays? If you could switch 3 to 5 plays around on their outcome, that is a huge differential in a game. And so you probably, in the leagues, I think, as even as it's ever been. I mean, these teams, the worst team in the league and the best team, there isn't a team I can name in the NFL that I could take 2 teams and say this team will beat them 10 out of 10 times. The league's just not built. It's not like college football where it's Alabama taking on Southeastern Maine, for their opening game where there's just no way in the world that team's going to beat Alabama. It's a league of equalness, and so that kick returner, if you have a stud back there, just like that Washington game, that's the difference in the game. That's why those guys are doing that.
And that's my whole point. And I kind of don't want to talk about coaching staff being afraid because that just opens the door for Philbin sucks, Coil sucks, Laser sucks, and I really don't want to deal with that right now. I dealt with that I've dealt with that all I need to. I understand Philbin's not a leader kind of a coach, but players have developed under him, so let's stop pretending that that's not the case either.
He wasn't queasy. He went for it on 4th down.
He wasn't queasy. He went for it on 4th down, but because it didn't work, he's an idiot, right?
Exactly. It's always Monday morning quarterbacking with that. I don't feel like it's a matter of Philbin not. It's just this one situation. There's a reason. I just wish we kind of knew the reason. I don't know. I don't know if we'll ever know.
Well, everybody's there. Though, granted, this is unrelated to Landry, but it's special teams, is after this game anyway, I talk about them coming in and making that bold move of bringing in a rookie punter and a rookie kicker, but Franks was great. He hit everything, and he put a lot of his kicks into the end zone.
Well, granted, Chad,
all but one, I think.
Yeah.
No, he only missed one kickoff as a touchback, and even that one was really far.
Sorry, guys. I apologize.
Yeah, we've had worse. We've had sirens, motorcycles going by. So you know what? A dog, somehow it fits. At least that's something you find in a home.
Even the dog's excited about our special team.
Exactly. Here, I'll excuse myself for 2 seconds and get him to stop barking. I'll be right back.
All right, Ron.
No, but I mean, in one game, Lewis, I feel better about Frank than I ever felt about Sturgis. I mean, Sturgis, I was holding. Could you imagine having Sturgis this year when we got to kick those 30-yard extra points?
Good Lord, that
there was like 4 of them missed yesterday in the NFL, and so I'm thinking, yeah, I think it was the right move to go with Franks, but we'll see. There's a lot of season left, but at least I don't have a nervous breakdown every time we got to rely on a kick right now.
But you know what? It's the impatience of some people is coming right back out again, because I don't remember who it was. I think it was somebody actually pretty well respected on Twitter who said this. Matt Darr, that one punt where he kicked it out of the end zone. Mm-hmm. The first thing that came out of his mouth, or his fingers, I guess, was that, oh yeah, Brandon Fields lost that battle for sure, right? Because he was just not as good, and that was, of course, sarcasm to the utmost degree. And
I don't think Darr beat Fields out per se. I just think that Ron touched on this at the beginning of the show. Is Miami is trying to get cap space to roll over next year, and that was a significant cap savings. And I just look at it like, yeah, he put one through the back of the end zone there, but was a big differential in the game? I mean, it really wasn't.
It could have been. You don't know. But again, okay, I guess I'm going to have to go on the Matt Darr defense thing again. I don't think that Matt Darr. I think Matt Darr legitimately beat him. I don't have a problem admitting this. You have this rookie kicker who comes in, and he absolutely went insane. He was awesome in preseason, in the training camps. And let's not forget that Brandon Fields was facing a serious off year. I mean, I don't know how a punter, unless his leg is broken, can suddenly just stop being a good punter unless he's just getting old. And Fields is not really that old. So I don't know what happened to him.
Fields, I have no doubt in my mind he would have been a solid punter this year too. But, the differential in their salaries is astronomical for next year. I mean, it's practically another player. It's the difference of being able to keep maybe Lamar Miller or OV or something. And Darr he's done well. It's not like he's been a liability and he's shanking punts or he's hurting us at this point. So I just thought, that was a bold move by the coaches because, people haven't really brought this up, but, Philbin's under the gun this year to win. And, I mean, if you were in his case, would you want to be relying upon a rookie punter and a rookie kicker going into your year?
If Darr won the job, which I think he did, then yes.
Yeah, exactly. But it'd been a whole different situation if we would have taken the kicker over a really good kicker. But the reality was, as Franks beat Sturgis out, and he did it in that preseason when he hit that 51-yarder when that was, probably win or lose the job, and he nailed it. And so he had me at that point saying, look, he just hit a high-pressure 51-yard field goal. That's like a flipping a coin when Sturgis is kicking from that distance for him to hit that consistently. So I just thought, Franks played really well yesterday as a kicker. I mean, granted, he didn't have to win the game on a kick or something, and
he didn't really have to try that hard.
No, but he didn't.
The one field goal that was for 3 points was shorter than the extra points.
Right, but he made all of his kicks and he kicked them through the end zone, so he did everything you could ask of him as a kicker. So I was happy with his performance at the least, considering he's a rookie.
Yeah, but Matt Darr and Andrew Franks, as far as I'm concerned, they were the best choices. Whether you want to believe that Darr was brought in because of money or because he was legitimately better, that's up to your discretion. Personally, I feel like Darr actually did legitimately beat out Fields. Fields was not doing spectacularly this season either, and it seemed like Darr was matching him punt for punt.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you would have made their salaries equal, I don't know that, and not because of performance in this training camp preseason, just because from track record from the last 3 or 4 years that Fields is a Pro Bowl level punter. And like you said, that just doesn't change overnight, but there wasn't enough different. They were so equal in their punting battle, and Darr was doing such a good job. It was almost a no-brainer. I mean, you might as well keep the young guy with the low-cost contract that's doing a great job.
And that's all I'm saying is that Darr, he may not have the Pro Bowl pedigree that Fields had. What was he? When was he in the Pro Bowl? 2011. That was it.
Yeah.
I think that was it. So like, okay, so I guess once a Pro Bowler, always a Pro Bowler, and I guess we can move on from that. So, guys, we're gonna wrap this up really quick. Truth be told,
Are we wrapping? I'm back. Are we wrapping it up now?
yeah, we're gonna wrap it
Okay,
up
that works.
because
That
really
works.
we talked about the Redskins, we talked about Twitter. We actually did the one thing that I actually wanted to segue into earlier. We actually wound up going into the other thing. So let's just go over the roster moves really quick. Let's see. Okay, LaMike James, he's gone, and we decided to bring Stoneburner into the practice squad, up from the practice squad. So Stoneburner is on the roster now. So we have 2 tight ends again. So I guess Stoneburner he's been described as deceptively athletic. I personally would have picked Samish because I think people have been saying he's a better blocker, and B, he's a bigger target. So I would have preferred Samish. I would have brought in Samish, but I guess they preferred Stoneburner due to familiarity. Stoneburner was there last year, and Samish was not. So okay, whatever. They were just performance overall. They were pretty much interchangeable. Neither of them did anything particularly special. And Raheem Mostert, I believe that's how you say his name, was, or at least he is going to be, signed from the Philadelphia Eagles practice squad. Mostert, according to Barry Jackson and Andrew Abramson, I got stats here from both of them. Mostert led the NCAA in kickoff return average in 2011, and he averaged 26 yards per return on 88 kickoff returns at Purdue. So it seems that they still don't want Landry to do kick returns because they're bringing in an outsider who is, once again, a kickoff return specialist.
Well, he'll also be, for now, the number 3 running back, I would assume.
No, he can't be the third. No, yeah, I guess you might be right.
I mean, until Ajayi's healthy, anyway.
Well, this is the thing. We may not even need to get to 3 running backs because, as it is, how many snaps did Damian Williams actually play? I'm not even sure. Lamar Miller wasn't even used that much. So what's the point of 3 running backs?
But I mean, I think they're typically going to dress 3 backs. I don't believe you'll see him on the field unless.
Yeah, that I get. Yeah, they'll dress him, but he's not going to be used.
Oh, right. So no, I just meant that was basically LaMichael James's role, was to be if Lamar Miller got hurt, he was to be the 3rd back, behind David Williams. But so I would assume he'll hold that role for now because they cut Gray. Because when I signed Gray, that's what I thought they were doing with him, was have him be that emergency 3rd back. And that's kind of what he'll probably be in reality if they get him on the practice squad. Because I imagine let's say Lamar Miller is going to miss 2 weeks or something like that, or Damian Williams is, I can't imagine they won't bring Gray right back up to be the backup for the interim anyway, until Ajayi's back. But anyway, I know we're wrapping it up, so I didn't know if you wanted to talk about the blatant, clearly out of control, no dispute that Ndamukong Suh was kicking people.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
Well, wait, I guess that didn't happen. So
no, it didn't happen.
I know. I was just
laughing.
Laughing.
I was a little nervous about it, though, because they watch him so closely. I mean, everything he does in the league.
Yeah, but you know who watches him closer? You know who watches him closer? Us. And we didn't see anything.
Yeah, but people are going to say we're homers. So I was just nervous the NFL might say that it was purposeful. Obviously, they didn't see it as purposeful, or he would at least be
He
fine.
didn't kick him, Ron. He walked past him and his knee hit his helmet.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I was laughing about it because some people were playing it off like he was trying to stab him on the ground or something. It was so egregious. So I'm like, I didn't even see him do anything.
Perhaps if these players would wear their helmet correctly, it wouldn't happen.
You should tweet that, Ron. There's what you need to tweet.
It's just if you put on your helmet the way you're supposed to, your helmet wouldn't go fly off because Sue went walking by you.
Yeah,
come on, seriously. So
I got a chuckle out of it. That's why I was throwing it in there for humor.
Yeah, I know. That's a good way to end the show, though. So McClendon is in, Brenner is out again. Gray going to be on the practice squad. That's the last of the roster moves for the day. And
I have one quick question though. If we brought Brenner on, then we had to cut him again. So that means he was out. He could have been claimed, correct?
I believe
we took that chance. Okay. When did that happen?
Now it's all over. Now it's all over again, I guess. I don't. I'm not really sure. I'm still not sure how the waiver wire really works. I still have I have a lot to learn still. I'll willingly admit that. So I'm not a genius here.
From what I understand, at least at the beginning of the season, it goes off last year's record. So the Bucks always have first shot. Tennessee always has second shot, and yada yada yada. Okay, but what I'm saying is if he, I know he was sought after he he always takes second
that,
shot
yeah.
and yada yada yada. Okay, but what I'm saying is if he, I mean, I know he was sought after he wasn't claimed. We had to pay another extra $4,000 a week for him, and now we're putting him back on the practice squad again. I assume that same deal will stand for him. He's getting his
he's getting
$10,000 instead of his $6,600.
Exactly. I'm sure they'll still pay him that as well. So, and he's
Assuming he doesn't get claimed.
Yeah, assuming he doesn't get claimed, but I don't think he's going to.
That's what I'm nervous about. I think it's risky because so many teams were wanting him on the practice squad. Somebody might thought, you know what? After 1 week of football and one of your guys went down, you might say, you know what? I'm grabbing Brenner. It was a risky move.
He's a guy that could, serve as a guard that he can play average, but he's not going to ever be good. But he's more valuable to the Dolphins is why they pay more, because he's completely versed in their scheme. And so we can plug Sam Brenner in tomorrow and he can perform, whereas another team, it'd probably take him a few weeks to adjust to their system and everything to be game ready. It'd be hard for him to get game ready for a completely new system immediately. So I don't think there's going to be a team jump right out and claim him, but it'll just take some injuries. So if you have a team maybe that loses 2 guards in the same game, then they're going to take a strong look at claiming him because they could probably use him immediately. So it'll just that's the risk you take. But Miami's so far done an exceptional job at using that practice squad to just extend the roster out.
They've been lucky.
They've been
lucky that nobody's been claimed.
They have been lucky. I agree.
We're lucky that we had those 2 tight ends because everybody's thinking, well, maybe we'll need another tight end, but we needed one immediately, and if we didn't have one of those 2 available on our practice squad, we'd have to be bringing in a guy to teach him the system. So at least, we had that depth that we can just plug him in right away. So
but let's think about this, though. Our tight end is a guy who has struggled to stay healthy. We're 1 hit away from Stoneburner being our starting tight end. I'm just saying. It makes me a little nervous.
My point is, at least they know the system. Could you imagine if they had gotten claimed and we didn't have any tight end that knew our system? We'd just be bringing in somebody new right now to learn the offense. So at least we can still run our offense and they know the plays. That's nuts. But
I guess it's better than nothing.
They got burned immediately going to tight end roster, and that's where it's at.
Yep.
Hopefully Jordan stays healthy. That's all I can say.
Yeah, Cameron better stay healthy. That's all I can. Yeah, that's a big deal, especially now that he's gotten a connection with Tannehill.
Yeah, because how long has Fox been trying to pass this concussion protocol? Now 3 weeks, and he can't.
I don't know what's up with that.
He can't pass it, and I'm nervous that Sims is going to be in that same boat. So we're gonna find out.
Severe.
Sims almost looked like he was dead.
Yeah, it was.
Well, he got knocked out. He literally was out cold. And
I heard somebody say that he got Tannehilled, which I'm gonna have to agree. I hate to say it, I'm gonna have to agree because if Tannehill throws the touchdown instead of the incomplete pass, that doesn't happen.
Yeah,
okay,
that's true. That's
fine,
true.
but
hopefully he'll recover from that quicker, sooner than later. But I heard in the locker room he wasn't quite right yet either. So he's probably gonna be a good 2 to 3 weeks, I would assume. But we'll see.
Well, we should be okay for 2 or 3 weeks, I guess. I don't know. It's Buffalo coming in week 3, so that's a little scary. So that's going to wrap it up. And public service announcement from the PhinManiacs. If you're a kid watching this and you happen to play football, wear your helmet correctly. And put extra padding in it if you have to. Make sure you protect your brain because your brain is a very important part of your body. It's kind of what makes you go. So protect your brain. It's very important. And don't let people think that you're dirty just because you maybe knock a guy's helmet off by walking past him.
Lewis.
Don't be that guy don't be that guy who gets such a bad reputation that you can't even walk past somebody without somebody saying you did something dirty.
And if you ever want more tips, follow Lewis on Twitter. He's just full of them. So.
I'm full of useless information.
I love it.
All right, so that's going to wrap it up for this show. I'd like to thank our guest, Ron Canniff of Unsquish the Fish. You can follow him on Twitter at unsquishthefish, and you can follow him on his podcast. And I frequently guest on his show because I'm awesome that way, Anyway,
you are.
Don't stroke my ego. I have enough problems with it. So that's going to be it for myself, Ron, and of course my co-host Chad Ronnebaum, who you can follow at GoFins4SB, by the way. So that's going to be it for this show. I'd like to thank you for joining us, and we'll see you all next time on the PhinManiacs.com podcast.
See you. Thanks.